me, Sean Capri, and welcome to We the GamerCast. It publishes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play every single Monday. Thank you for subscribing and rating the show on Apple Podcasts and sharing with your friends and telling your mom and telling your dad and telling your cousins and your cousins' cousins and your second cousins. And eventually, I think it all just comes back down to all of your family. Thank you guys so much for sharing the show. I have to be honest, right before we get into things here, I'm not stoked about that hay. I'm a little medicated right now, if I'm being honest with you. I'm a little affected, but we're going to get into it. But if you're new, because guys, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. If you're new, here's the deal. Every week, I have sweet hangs with a stranger from the internet. We talk about life and video games. And if you want to be on the show, you can tweet at me at Sean Capri. It's Sean like Connery, Capri like the pants. I'm on a bit of a mix of, I don't know, I think actually more than the cold medication that I'm on, which is definitely making me feel a little woozy. It's definitely, and also like normally when I get a little bit of a tickle in the throat, like I kind of get like a good like, hey, but like, I don't know what's going on, man. Not feeling my best because I'm a little tired because I ran a 10-kilometer run today, did a charity run earlier today. And guess what? Last Sunday, I did the exact same thing. I don't think I talked to you guys about that because I think I recorded before that because I was actually on top of things last week, but that's for a whole other story. Ran 10 kilometers this week for cardiac care and research at a local hospital here, which I have a huge amount of admiration and respect for everybody who works there. They're going through some stuff, man. Last weekend, it was for my 10-kilometer run for my good friend Justin Ching, who died of suicide a number of years ago. So that was a fundraiser for suicide prevention and mental health and awareness and all of that kind of stuff. So really feeling good about how all that went. I wasn't going to do the 10K today. I was actually signed up to do a 5, and then I sort of like gave in to some peer pressure, and I feel like the best kind of peer pressure, like, oh, come on, you can do it. You know what I mean? And honestly, I'll just jump right into it right here. I feel so grateful that I did that because immediately after I finished the run, I met two people. One, I'll tell you about. One guy was, I don't know exactly how old he is, and I'm getting worse and worse at telling like or guessing people's age, but he was an older guy, but obviously very proud of the fact that he just finished his 10-kilometer run as well. And as he finished the finishing line, as he crossed over, he proudly raised his shirt and showed his scar from a recent triple bypass. And it was just one of those moments of like just a shot of perspective, man, where I was like, golly, these hills are kind of tricky and I don't really do 10K all that often. I wish I could run faster and blah, 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 blah. All the worries, and that's just related to the physical of the running. Basically just made me think about the rest of life as well, where it's like this dude just like powered through. I mean, it wasn't the most challenging 10K, but I mean, it was 10K. So that's a long distance. That's a far way. And he just, I don't know. Sometimes I meet these people who seem to have like another lease on life, and it's exactly why I feel so grateful that I do what I do, like for a living. But then also, like I would be doing this stuff even if it wasn't part of my day job. Really, it's just something that I've always felt really compelled to do. I really like pushing myself in a physical way and then also raising money along the way. So this is all a roundabout way to say thank you to you guys for supporting all of that stuff. Between the mental health awareness run last weekend and this one for cardiac care and research, we raised more than $4,200 and counting, which is incredible as we shift gears now into Extra Life. So we're going to be helping out a lot of people this year as a community, and I am so grateful to all of you guys for all of that. Holy crap. Okay, so did I explain? I guess I'm just kind of like, these runs kind of destroy me. That's kind of that was the point about me being medicated. I'm just kind of like, you know, and not even like, I'm being hyperbolic. It's not like I took some Advil and like Tylenol cold kind of thing. So mostly just my legs, because I'm standing up at my desk right now. My legs are feeling kind of wobbly. That's really it. Anyways, I hope you guys are great. I want to thank everybody who supports us over at Patreon. You can do that as well if you guys like. Patreon.com/YumiCapri, because just for $1 a month, you get early access to all the shows. This show, the Xbox Drive, the Nintendo Drive, the PlayStation Drive, the RPG Cave. There's probably something else I'm missing. Anyways, a ton of content just for $1 a month. And for $3 a month, you get exclusive content like the Pants Patreon podcast for Patrons Podcast, which is it's like a Q&A. It's kind of like this, but longer, and you get to tell me what to talk about. It's super fun. You would have seen a couple of those examples pop up on the feeds. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed that as well. And I want to take a quick moment to thank our premium producers, Dallas Ford, Lee Navarro, who you heard last week. He's the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team. And by the way, if you're just joining today, go back, listen last week. We kicked off Extra Life season. It's happening. Open invite to people to join us in Rome, New York. But if you can't join us in Rome, New York, you can still join the team. You can play from home. You can do whatever you want. You can reach out to all the links are in the show notes. So there you go. Lee Navarro, we talked about all that. And Jonathan Brown, the third premium producer, the man behind the music on the Xbox Drive and the Nintendo Drive. You can support Jonathan at youtube.com/PME Entertainment. Our platinum producers, Robbie Bobby Miller and Trucker Sloth. You guys are amazing. And all of our gold members, Argo, Benji Kong, Brendan Myers, Dallas Robbins, Dano, Emily O'Kelly, Foolish Fuji, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Marcus O'Neill, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, RJ Kern, Skinny Matt, and Xavier Reyes, you guys. So many of you I've been playing Halo with on Saturday nights. Twitch.tv/Sean Capri. Halo Saturdays continue on. I think that's probably, I just wanted to tell you guys about the charity runs. Those have been going good. Oh, shout out to freaking Marcus O'Neill, local guy, lives here in the city with me as well, and really got me ready for this, man. Earlier on in the summer, I decided to make a bit of a change and focus on my health, and I think that has helped out. I think it definitely has. Marcus has kept me accountable on running and my eating and all of that stuff, just always there for me. And he's got a trillion things going on in his own life, which I always appreciate people like that. So Marcus, shout out to you. Really good friend. I'm lucky to know you, my friend. Okay, you guys, Lord Sovereign, my goodness gracious. This was a long time coming. There was an episode of the Iron Lords podcast, Sov's podcast, that he does with I guess like 5 other people. It is definitely a worthwhile. You guys should definitely check it out. But I wanted to talk to Sov because there's been a couple of moments, when I listen to the show, it's just like, he's kind of wired a little bit, and they're all kind of like wired differently on that show. Everybody's kind of, we'll get into this right at the start of the conversation, but Sov is wired a little bit differently, and I just feel like there's a kindness to him. There's a introspectiveness. There's something there that I just wanted to learn more about, really is really the way that I'll put it. So I'm not going to delay any longer. You should be following him if you aren't already at Lord Sov ILP on Twitter. Here he is, Lord Sovereign.
On the show, we definitely all play our different roles. You know, like, you know, King is the agitator, and I'm I'm the contrarian when it comes to, you know, his opinions, and it works. It's a back and forth, and then Cog is like in the middle, but then sometimes that he'll definitely lob the grenades out into the battlefield and just, you know, see what happens. And then Attic is always going to come out with an opinion, you know, from the far left of wherever. So somehow it works.
And one of the things that I've noticed listening to Cog and defining Duke as well is like he doesn't hold back at all. Like he'll throw out the, like, you know, when I'm talking to Attic and when I'm talking to Sov, like it's just like you guys are clearly just so close. You know, like you've always been that way, and I don't know. When you learn about how close and how long you guys have known each other, like it's really not a surprise, but it's just so rare, I think, is really what it is. That, like, when do you ever get to see people, you know, still together, still friends, still laughing it up? Like, how long have you guys all known each other at this point? Your whole lives?
Yeah, basically, Cog and I have known each other since 3rd grade, right?
That's wild, dude.
Yeah, and then King came into the fold later on. I guess we were already like in sort of high school, I think. I went away for high school. I was in boarding school, so I wasn't around when Cog actually met King.
Oh, yeah.
And I I remember I've told the story a million times, but I came back to visit, I think. I wasn't sure. I don't remember if it's to visit or I had finished school and come back. And it's the first time I meet King, and I'm like, he's bigger than us, and he looks older than us. He's not much older than us, but he looks older than us. So like, why is Cog hanging out with this old dude? Like, you know? And why does this old dude keep talking smack?
He's always been like that.
He's always been that way. So yeah, and it was just, you know, it was he and I sitting down that same day, I think, to like 4-hour Street Fighter Alpha marathon.
Oh yes, I love it.
And it was a thing, like I thought I was great, and he thought he was great, and we literally, I think we went toe to toe for like 4 hours, and at the end of it, you know, there was a friendship there because he was talking smack, I was talking smack, and then we're very evenly matched, and it was just one of those things. It's like, you know, after that was it. That was history.
Do you ever think about like what put you in that spot? Like, like you could have not been there at that time. It seems like, the chances of you meeting and having that moment are kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I probably would have met him at some point, right? Because coming back home, I would have hung out with Cog at some point, and I would have met him at some point. But it just happened to be that particular time in that particular game, and it's interesting because he and I are the ones that sort of gravitated to the 2D stuff. So by that time, like Cog and the rest of the group had moved on kind of completely to 3D. They weren't into Street Fighter anymore. Yeah, and I'm kind of a 2D purist, so I was. Like still
even at the time, it was hard not to be swayed. Like, this Virtual Fighter.
I loved all that stuff. Like I loved Virtual Fighter. I loved Tekken. You have so many Tekken stories. But I did not want to let go of that. As a Sega kid, and I was holding on to that Saturn, holding on to that Dreamcast. And obviously Dreamcast had one of the best 3D games ever in Soul Calibur, but that Saturn was a 2D powerhouse.
I love that's a multi-platform game, but it's a Dreamcast game in your head.
Yeah,
so,
it is.
Like it doesn't exist on GameCube,
Well, the first one didn't come out on GameCube, right? So Soul Calibur, the sort of the first home conversion of Soul Calibur was an exclusive to the Dreamcast, and it was the launch game that sort of like propelled that console at least for a short period of time into into the stars, and then it just crashed and burned quickly after that. But yeah, Soul Calibur 2, right, was on everything. Soul Calibur 2 had the Heihachi version on PlayStation, the Link version on GameCube, and then Spawn for Xbox, which was...
That's wild. Spawn, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah, at first I was like, what? I liked Spawn, and I was like, what the heck is this character? And then I played him, like, all right, they put work into this character. Like it was awesome, man. Especially, coming off of the amazing Spawn game on the PS1.
I never played that one, actually. I never played the Spawn game. Was it not good?
Was it PS1 or was it Dreamcast? No, it was horrible. Horrible. You didn't miss anything.
No. Dreamcast was my first console that we actually bought. Like that was my brother and I kind of going in together. We're like, okay. And I don't know what it was. Like maybe it's just, I think it was like more powerful. Like why didn't we just buy a PlayStation? I don't really understand
At that point, it was that middle ground, and that's kind of why the Dreamcast failed. And besides all the internal strife that was going on at Sega, but the Dreamcast was that sort of middle ground between the PS1 and then the PS2 was on its way, and it was that first console that really, really gave you that arcade experience. So it was super powerful for its time. But the problem with it was that the Saturn was such a failure over here that the Dreamcast really got pushed up in timeline, and because of that, by the time the PS2 came out, it was completely outmatched. It was I'll say this all the time, that when the moment they showed Metal Gear Solid 2 running on that PlayStation, that the Dreamcast was dead. It was over. It was over. The moment you saw that freighter and all the physics stuff, and everybody was like, wow, I need a PlayStation 2. I don't care about Arcade Perfect Daytona USA or whatever.
Isn't that amazing too? Do you think that still happens? Is there still room for those kind of like moments where you go, well, I don't need anything else, like I need a PlayStation? Like, does that still happen now?
I don't know. I think it depends. Like, I think if you fall into the camp of being a fan of one or the other, and you sort of you pick a horse in the race, I think you have those moments because you're really invested in those particular titles. For me, I don't know that I expect them anymore. I'm surprised more by them than anything. Like if something comes up that really blows me away, then yes. But I don't know that I'm going into anything sort of hoping for it or expecting it anymore, because I don't know, maybe it's just a sort of byproduct of constantly talking about games and stuff like that. Like you're always in the know about something. Nothing is super surprising anymore. Like I've at this point, we've been, podcasting and stuff long enough that sometimes I'm privy to whatever quote unquote insider information or leaks and stuff like that, as just a pure fan, you're probably not privy to if you're not looking for it. So a lot of the mystique around it has sort of disappeared. And I liked, with movies, what's coming down the pipeline forever, right? It's coming. And with games, there's still that mystery and that mystique around it. And I like being surprised.
Me too.
I like the secrecy of gaming. I mean, I like to. if you give me sort of a timeline and a general game plan of what you want to do, cool. But I like to be surprised individually. I mean, seeing Wolverine, yesterday,
that was wild, man.
Wild. I was like, just seeing Insomniac. Period. I was like, what the hell?
Like, do these guys sleep? And apparently they don't crunch. Like I don't know. They're doing okay, man.
Yeah, I'm thinking that studio is like 500 strong. They have to be.
Honestly,
they have to be.
Yeah.
I don't know what their numbers are, but like they have to be, because you have to rotate people in and out. People have to, take vacations and sleep and eat, and you know what I mean? It's like
they're almost the kind of studio that I just have such appreciation for them, and like they're so consistent that I'm like, just kind of, can I donate to you guys? Do you have a Patreon or something? Like, I'll also buy your games, but like this is impressive. Like we want more of this.
Have they ever had this cadence before? I don't recall them ever having this sort of release cadence before, or being well renowned for sort of
not quite this high level. You know, like, I mean, a lot of people really like, I think, the Resistance games, right? Like, there's definitely some people. I am not necessarily one of those people, but
honestly, I played the first one at the launch of the PS3, right? I thought it was impressive and I enjoyed it. I played a little bit of 2, never touched 3.
Yeah.
And I thought it was cool. I definitely liked it more than Killzone. I was never a Killzone fan. I tried. I actually played all of 1.
Yeah.
And I was like, Halo killer.
They had some weird kind of controls too, right? Like just the way that you kind of zoomed in and everything, and I don't know, it had some strange stuff.
I do remember that when you would you would zoom in and like aim down sights. It was like it would really jump up on you.
Mm-hmm. I remember like it felt like you were really short in Killzone. Like you like run up to somebody else and like, why am I looking at his crotch? like tippy toes, buddy. Come on, man. Like,
it was always. I always had a thing because they touted it as the Halo killer, and it never even came close, honestly. But I mean, but I remember too having a pretty decent story. The whole thing about like essentially like the villains in the game were sort of not necessarily villains. It was a perspective thing. I forget their name now, but and then Shadowfall, I got it at the launch of PS4, and I played. I thought it was pretty, and I thought there was something about how like you could approach scenarios differently. Like it was almost like a stealth thing, or where you could approach combat scenarios a little bit differently, and I thought that was cool. But I don't even recall I didn't finish it. So it's just Killzone is a thing for me. Like it just never was. But I would like to see Resistance come back.
I don't think it's ever coming. Well, not from Insomniac.
Not from Insomniac.
Yeah, I think they're booked up for the next 12 years or so. They're building their MCU. You know what I mean? Which would be actually kind of amazing.
It would be.
Wolverine is just like he's the best. He's the best of them. He's the best X-Men. Like he's just.
Did you ever play Origins?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. This is a long time coming.
Yeah, I remember I was sort of done with licensed games at that point. I remember my brother playing. He was like, "You need to play this game." I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "I just the movie sucked. I don't want to play this." He's like, "The movie's just a wrapper for the game, but the game goes really in depth into the character. It's gory. Like it's not. It's just the title. Like." And I started playing, and I'm like, wow, this is better than it has any right to be.
Did you ever play the Deadpool game? It was kind of around the same area, same time.
I started playing it.
So funny, man.
It was more over the top than I cared for at the time. I think if I sat down and played it now, I'd appreciate it more.
Yeah.
You go through these stages, like when you're as a gamer, like, and for me, I'm at the point now, I don't have any time to really game. Like it sucks. I don't have any, but then I'm more willing to try anything now than ever before in my life. Because when I was younger, you're like, this is trash. I'm not playing that. I'm not type of games. And I was very sort of focused on particular genres and whatnot, and not unwilling to play other stuff. And then now, like, give me anything. And for me, I don't care what it is. To me, it has to have some merit.
Do you remember like what was like for me? I'll give you an example of this, like in terms of like a game that kind of like opened you up and you made you realize like, oh snap, like I actually can enjoy something other than my typical kind of thing. Like Fallout 3 was one of those games for me where I'm like, I didn't think I could play these games. I thought they were too hard and too gigantic. I didn't understand it. And Persona 4 Golden was another one where I'm like, oh snap, even more. Like, I'm always curious, like what are those moments that open your mind?
So for me, one is always sort of turn-based strategy.
Yeah.
And I have stories with these guys because back in the day when we would hang out on Saturdays, right, it would usually be Halo, Tekken, or wrestling games, right?
Yeah.
Or we'd be watching like boxing or something like that, or we'd be watching kung fu movies. Or it would always be something different. But every now and again, I'd get to Cog's house, and these guys would be knee deep in XCOM. And I would be so pissed off because I had no desire. Like, why are you playing this trash looking game? Because they were playing XCOM on the PS1, and it was like. And I mean, and they went so deep in. All of us, like all of the characters. Yeah, he named all of us. And they're like, yo, you need to sit with us. You need to plan and strategize with us. I'm like, I don't care. I would go to the other room and Cog had some like stand-up arcade games. So I would play that, or I'd be on like my PSP or whatever.
Yeah. There's almost nothing worse than being like that one person. You're like, and the fact that you love it so much somehow is making it worse. Like it's repelling me away from the situation. God,
it was so bad. I detested it. But then again, like I said, I'm at a point in my life where I'm willing to try anything.
Yeah.
And when I saw Mario Rabbids,
there it is.
I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this a shot. Yep. This seems like it's right for me to be able to jump in, and it's gonna give me the basics of this type of game.
Yep.
In a very friendly type of setting, and it pretty much did. And the thing about it is that it had those core things that people that love XCOM talk about, like Overwatch and stuff like that. And so the strategy of it really attracted me to it. And the funny thing about it is that I love whatchamacallit, Final Fantasy Tactics. I love that.
Wait, so that was way before XCOM.
That was way before, right? But the thing about it is, back then I enjoyed Final Fantasy more. The XCOM stuff, the space, the sort of Space Marine stuff didn't appeal to me as much. And Tactics to me is a beautiful game.
Yeah.
XCOM looked horrible. So I could not relate at all.
Yeah.
But after playing Mario Rabbids, I was like, wow, I'm back in. And I went in, I played like Gears Tactics. I played I didn't finish it. I played some of the, what the heck is it? The XCOM game that came out for PC not too long ago. It was just PC.
I don't remember. I only remember XCOM 2.
Chimera Squad.
Oh, yeah, that is recent.
Which was a little different because they had like different like door breaching mechanics and stuff like that. It was very cool. So yeah, I'm not like all in like an addict or a cog.
Sure.
I appreciate and like them very much and willing to try them. And the second one for me is I've always liked open world games, but I always tended to play them a certain way, like Assassin's Creed games. Well, back in the day they weren't open world, but GTA, I didn't really go into exploring the world fully. I would go do the missions and whatnot. And I would find that if I would deviate and go do something else, like I'd find myself not doing anything. And for whatever reason in GTA, that would bore me.
Yeah.
When I started playing Red Dead Redemption, though, it was one of those things where it's like, I need to explore everything in this world. I don't know why.
I'm the same way. Like, I'm like, I don't know why I'm going to like run over here to grab this weed or this whatever flower that's just in. I'm just picking all these plants and stuff. I don't know what the heck it was.
Just picking plants, just hanging out in the middle of the desert, seeing what happens, like who tries to rob me and like what damsel in distress pops up. And that game, for being as old as it is, the original I'm talking about is.
Original.
Yeah.
Like Red Dead.
I mean, the original.
Red Dead Revolver or Red Dead Redemption?
No, not Revolver. Yeah.
I never played Revolver. I never actually played that one.
I played a little bit of Revolver. I mean, it's a totally different game. I maybe played an hour or two of it back when it came out. But, but Redemption was the one that really, and I came to it late. That game came out in 2010.
Something like that.
I didn't play it till 2013.
And were you on 360 or were you on PS3 back then?
I was on 360, yeah.
So did you have a PlayStation as well?
Yeah, I definitely had a PlayStation. I definitely had a PlayStation. PlayStation for me, after the PS1, once the Xbox came out, right? So PS2 era, it became my exclusive box, right? I sort of gravitated as a Sega kid. A lot of Sega kids gravitated to the Xbox. And so that became my primary platform, right? All my third-party games were played there, and PS2 was my exclusive box. Same way with whatever Nintendo console, like the GameCube or whatever. I had the GameCube for their exclusives, and and that's the way it is today. Honestly, I mean, my PlayStation, it's never been my platform of choice, the one that I 100% go to.
Yeah,
like even when the PS1, I picked up my PS1 when I was away at college, and but I was only away for a year, and then I came home and I stayed home and I finished school at home. Yeah. As soon as I got home, my Saturn was at home, and the Saturn got as much play as the PS1 as soon as I got back home.
Oh, I love it.
I love that. I love the Sega Saturn. So,
what about the PlayStation made you pick it up though? Like, 'cause I'm always interested in if you were sort of like playing Nintendo from the beginning, then you were probably going to get the next one. Like if you were into Sega, you're probably going to get the next one, and like. I don't know. You probably remember too, like that. Like there was a lot of wannabe consoles that sort of like popped up every once in a while, like the 3DO. It's like, what the heck is this? And I remember thinking, like, is this just another one of those things? And it just sort of took off. So I'm curious, like, where in the PlayStation's life cycle were you kind of like a day one? I'll buy whatever video games are out there. Was there a game? Yeah. Was it a Final Fantasy thing?
It wasn't. No, it wasn't a day one. It wasn't a day one, but it was launch window.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. I was away at school in Boston. And so, again, a broke
I got to ask you about boarding school as well, man.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I was in Boston, and I was working. I had taken a year off going into my freshman year of college. And I did a year of community service. So that, because.
What was that about?
Just bolstering the rest of the sort of application.
Like, you weren't in trouble or anything.
No, not at all, not at all. So back
doesn't sound like something people like voluntarily do. It's like, what did you do, Soft?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what did you do? What did they force you to do?
Court ordered. Yeah.
No. So it was one of those things. Where it was like, well, I didn't want to
go. So responsible.
I needed a break after boarding school. Boarding school. Yeah. I definitely needed it.
Let's dive into that. We'll come back to PlayStation, but why the boarding school? What were you in trouble before that? Were you
No, boarding school. I was a smart boy.
Yeah.
So I got a scholarship to a school in Concord, New Hampshire. Called St. Paul's School. It's to this day is one of the most elite prep schools in the country.
Wow.
It's a really good school. I unfortunately did not take advantage of all the opportunities that were presented to me because it's so funny. Like before I got into high school, leading up, I was in junior high school here in the city. So I did my freshman year here, 9th grade. Mm-hmm. So, but up until that point, I was the epitome of nerd. Like I was just a, overweight, chubby kid, Coke bottle glasses, whatever. And you get bullied or whatnot, but I learned how to defend myself, especially, with people like Cog and whatnot around me or whatever. And then I was fairly decent at sports. So that saved me a little bit from some ridicule and a couple of beatings probably. Mm-hmm. But, going into that 9th grade year, I had a summer job. I was working with my dad, so I was making money. I was stretching out a little bit. I got contact lenses. All of a sudden, I'm starting to grow into my body a little bit.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, girls are starting to look at me a little bit differently.
Okay.
And I had no idea how to cope with it at all.
Yeah, who does?
No idea whatsoever. So any sort of
was your dad good looking? Like, was there any precursor to this? Like, did you know that? Like, could you have known that? Like, you were just like morph out of this metamorphosis.
When you're a kid,
you just think it's forever.
It's forever. Yeah, everything is the worst thing ever. There's
what about brothers? You have brothers or anything like that?
Yeah, I have a younger brother.
Yeah,
and a younger sister. I'm
crap! You don't have nobody else.
Yeah,
so I'm just discovering everything on your own.
Exactly, I'm the guinea pig for everything, right? And So yeah, I'm going through that. And so again, I don't know how to deal with it. And like all the good habits that let me be honest. I didn't have very many good study habits because the educational part kind of came easily to me.
Yeah.
So I, everything, I didn't study hard or whatever, and I got good grades.
Yeah, same.
So the problem with that was, so going into that was a problem going into boarding school, because boarding school, all of a sudden now you're the dumbest person in the class. And you're around people that are literal geniuses, and or people that, come from, very old money, and have been in the boarding school sort of system since elementary school. So this is old hat to them. So I get into the school. My parents are, super proud. I'm excited for the experience, because at that point in time, now it's different. It's a little more regulated, and they watch over kids more. But back then, it was literally a college experience, way before you were mature enough to have that much responsibility. And for me, I definitely wasn't mature enough to sort of handle everything that was thrown at me. So what happened was, I go to the school. My first month there, I'm studying super hard. I realize that I have to study much more than I ever have before, just to even stay on level with a lot of these kids. And then once I got comfortable there, that all went to the wayside. There was a lot of hanging out. Like I said, I was a little bit full of myself, because all of a sudden now I was attractive to females, and I didn't know how to balance it. And I didn't have my parents there to tell me, no, like, turn the TV off. No, you're not going out. No, you're not doing this. You're going to do what you need to do. It was up to me. And I made a lot of bad decisions. I managed to graduate. Kind of by the skin of my teeth, and it's sort of, so I did that. And then like I said, I needed the break, and I went home for a year. And I said, okay, what can I do to sort of bolster my applications once I do start applying to colleges? A year of community service always looks amazing.
Oh my
on a college application.
I mean, you say like you made bad decisions. I somehow think that like maybe just in the realm of boarding school, they were maybe bad decisions. But like ultimately, like you're pretty straight and narrow. Like you're pretty.
Yeah,
you had a path. Maybe like, did you have like an idea or a goal or a vision, or did your parents have something in mind for like where you were headed?
No, not. When I was younger, I enjoyed things like drawing and stuff like that. I was pretty good at math. So, but there was nothing. And honestly, I was a pretty decent baseball player. So,
okay,
I had that sort of dream. But again, it was one of those things that it's stuff you sort of just talk about. But
yeah,
I don't think I ever. There's one thing about myself that I'll say is like I've never been that person that from the very beginning, I know what I want. I'm going to get this. It was never that. And that's always been a little bit frustrating to me, because
I'm the same way.
Yeah. So many people I know this is what I want. This is what I love. This is what I'm passionate about. And they set a goal for themselves, and there's a path. For me, once, you get to a certain age and the baseball dream goes, or whatever the case may be, then all of a sudden now it's just like, okay, what am I passionate about that I really care to sort of focus my time and effort on becoming good at or becoming proficient at. And that sort of never really, it never really panned out in that way. Like, I kind of said, you know what, for me, my passions are the things I enjoy, gaming and whatnot, like the sports aspect of stuff, baseball, whatnot, things like that. Like, I'm fine getting that enjoyment from my hobbies. And not necessarily that fulfillment career wise.
Sure.
For me, so what I wound up, doing is I work and engineering and maintenance and stuff like that. So just dealing with like all kinds of like building stuff and what have you. And I've done well in that. But again, it's like I conceded that I don't mind working in something that doesn't necessarily fulfill anything in me passion wise.
Sure. Yeah.
But it does allow me to pursue those things on the side in a way that kind of keeps it from becoming work. Right. Yeah. And the thing, because oftentimes a lot of people that I know that are passionate about something and try to make it their job, once you make it your job, the passion sort of goes, because.
And then what do you do?
Exactly. And you sort of spoiled that.
Have a total crisis, man.
Yeah.
Just like, damn it, I ruined it.
Yeah. So for me, this is probably at this point now 10, 15 years ago, where I decided like, look, I'm good with just, I'm going to work hard. And that's going to allow me to do the other things that I like to do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind that that I'm not working in my dream, quote unquote, dream job, because I've never had that. The moment the baseball dream went, I'm like, okay, that's it.
Isn't that an amazing thing that happens when like you get a certain age and you're like, oh snap, I'm many year or even a couple of years older than like these rookies that are coming into the league.
I know.
Like it just keeps happening and they stay the same age and you're just like, oh my God, I'm double the age of some of these kids.
It's crazy. I mean, just to see like Derek Jeter get put into the Hall of Fame the other day. And it's like,
wild?
Wow.
Yeah, man.
And I'm like, I remember this kid coming up and playing. So it's crazy. But so for me, yeah, that, in terms of college and stuff like that. And I went and I came back and I was home and I focused and I finished all that. I did all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But it just was never something that sort of I could figure out in terms of like, I'm going to do this and this is where my life is going to take me after that. So,
but there's something to be said about that. Like there's some sort of like, you're open-minded, you're easygoing, I think too. Like maybe that's part of it. And because there's a pressure that you can put on
I like how you frame that. I
definitely.
Appreciate that.
Well, yeah, no, I don't know. Like there's everybody, I don't like thinking that there has to be like one way, to live. Obviously there's more than one way to live a life and to find a path and everything. And
if there's one thing that I've found just with the podcasting stuff and to see, the success that we've had and the success that Cog has had and stuff like that is that there really isn't, there are a number of different ways to sort of get to where you want to be.
You know how many kids went into journalism school because they wanted like the Greg Miller path?
Exactly.
Like they just like, I guess that's what I got to do. And it's like, it could be further from journalism now.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, he has that sort of base and it got him there, but
it's one way. It's just one way. But.
It definitely is one way. But the way the world works now, YouTube and everything else like that, like you could just go out there, you can literally work for yourself from day one.
Yeah.
And then, depending on your willingness to sacrifice, time and whatnot, and really
discover,
really work at it
and learn. And that's kind of why I was asking about like what if you have older brothers or sisters or anything like that, because like there is something to be like the person to pave the path, to pave the way and to trailblaze is really hard to do, like to discover like something new and on your own. Like you do have to be pretty courageous. You have to be willing to mess up and make mistakes and like so it's not all in vain, I don't think,
not at all. But for me I think the maturity of it came much later. You
have a self-reflection to yourself though, like there's a learning throughout the whole thing.
100%. Like again, you get to a certain point in your life when you're like, okay, I really have to step back for a second and see and think about what I've done, what I haven't done. And you hear people often say like, no regrets. Yeah. That's a difficult thing because there are certain points in your life that you just can't go back to and make certain decisions again. Mm-hmm. You can have other opportunities that sort of give you that, maybe put you on a similar path.
Sure.
But there are, if I had made certain decisions in my past, my future would, in my present and my future would probably look considerably different.
Big time.
And, I just, back then, if you gave me the opportunity to do it again, I would just be more studious. I would be like, hey, I don't need to go to this umpteenth party or whatever the case may be.
But for what reason? Like, I guess that's like, maybe, like each decision, maybe there was a better one to be made, but like, I feel like where you end up, kind of like what you're saying, like is a culmination of all the decisions. So that's maybe where the no regrets kind of comes from. Like, well, there might have been technically better, more sound decisions that could have been made along the way, but you landed on your feet, you ended up in a pretty good spot. And, it's tricky. It's a butterfly effect. It's the Ashton Kutcher movie that we all watch, the famous Ashton Kutcher movie.
I will tell you this, the things that I've been through in my life, whether they were self-imposed or not, have definitely made me the person that I am today. And the person that I am today is considerably more humble than the person I could have been.
Yeah.
Easily. And I see that very easily. It's given me an understanding of what my parents went through. Particularly my dad. My dad, grew up very poor in Puerto Rico and came here and started his family. And and just worked and just worked. And he's, and I look at him now, he retired a couple years ago, but he retired because, he had Parkinson's and it was starting to really affect him. So, he would have kept working. He would have kept working 100%.
Yeah.
And, it breaks my heart a little bit because he's like, not a little bit, a lot, just the fact that he worked his entire life and he can't really enjoy his retirement because he's in pain all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things that if I had taken a different path and not stumbled in the way that I have in my life, I probably wouldn't be nearly as appreciative of and nearly as reflective on as I am today. So definitely, again, I get when people say no regrets, because everything good and bad that you do and it happens to you is what makes up who you are today.
Sure.
But again, like
I think it's just how much you weigh on it. How much does it weigh on you?
Right.
You can
precisely
not have, or maybe you can have regrets, but it doesn't like cripple you on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of it.
And
I was
that's
curious
definitely
about
something. Yeah.
I was curious about where the work ethic came from, and I think you just gave me a little piece of that. Is your dad just kind of like, where did you had a path, you seem to like know right from wrong in terms of good decisions versus bad decisions. Like, where does that come from? Like, is that a lot? Is a lot from your mom as well? Like, what were your parents kind of like growing up?
So growing up, my dad was super strict. My dad was the disciplinarian, and he was not very good at sort of expressing emotion. He was that figure. Like, it was one of those things, like if you did something bad, my mom would be like, wait till your dad gets home. So dad was always that. Growing up, I didn't really see him soften up until he put me in little league and baseball, and then there was a bond that happened there where, he was still the disciplinarian or whatnot, but I got to see another side of him because I could see him sort of investing his time in me. And it was just different than, I go to school in the morning, dad goes to work. I don't see him till the evening. He comes home. If I was bad, I'm going to get bad dad. If I was good, he's going to be like, how was your day? Whatever. But there wasn't that closeness until
there's
baseball.
No time for it.
There isn't. Yeah, there isn't. And if you're not a person who's naturally that way, and in his case, it's because of how he grew up. When you're young, you don't see that, right? You just kind of like, why are you this way? I didn't see a lot of that until a little bit older. And even after baseball, it was still, again, I was still very young. So in my dad's mind, it was still that divide where it's like, you're not an adult yet. I'm going to give you a little more leeway, but I'm still going to be, fairly strict. And so it was one of those things where it wasn't until like I hit my 20s that our relationship sort of evolved, that he saw me as, and you're an adult, like, and talk to you a certain way. And it was all of a sudden now my dad was more like my friend.
But the job is never done, right? Like that's the hardest thing. And it's really difficult to communicate that, like you're trying to send a message, but you can't say what the message is, like a magician showing his tricks kind of thing. Like you can't really, but I don't know. Like, do you have kids, Sav?
No, unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. No.
How long have you guys been married now?
We're going on 8 years.
I should have warned you about maybe a question like that.
No, it's fine.
Precisely 7 years. I know exactly how long.
It'll be 8 years in November.
Oh, get out of here. You and I are very similar on that front, actually. Yeah. Chelsea and I have been married for 7 years as well.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, it's been something that we didn't anticipate. You never anticipate to have issues with. And then you're sort of ignorant to the process when you think, it's gonna happen,
definitely you've been warned your whole life, don't touch anybody, you'll get them pregnant. You know what I mean?
Don't breathe on anybody.
Exactly. Just 6 feet apart, everybody, keep your masks on. We've been hearing that for 20 years.
And then you pass a certain age and then it's like, no, it's not. And then so the thing was, again, when you're ignorant to that sort of stuff and you don't realize it, you tend to not seek help. You tend to wait too long to seek help.
Sure.
And for us, it's been difficult. So, so we're sort of now in the processes of doing what we need to do to be able to adopt.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's our plan. But yeah, I definitely, I would love to be a dad. I'm going to be an old dad.
No. I don't know about that, but it's funny because Cog was on too. And like, I don't know, maybe it's just all you guys, like you're very maybe it's the brotherly love that you guys all have that's going on. You have like the edge to you, but you're also all very caring as well. And I was actually surprised to hear that Cog isn't married and doesn't have kids and everything. It's like, what are you talking about? You guys, you'd be an absolute, Sav, you'd be a natural at it, man. Like you're very,
I hope so.
You are very reflective. You have a heart, man. Like I think that says a lot. So
it takes, again, had I not gone through the things I've been through in my life, I would be a different person. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the humility to the falling flat on my face and kind of looking in the mirror and being able to, because some people can't do it. Some people can't look in the mirror and be like, and be totally honest with themselves. And, there are a couple of times in my life that I had to be like, listen, man, stop fooling yourself. This is what you're doing. This is what you need to do to change. Yeah. And it's not going to be easy, but it is a matter of just doing it. And, for whatever reason, sometimes people just can't be that honest with themselves.
How much did your friends help or hurt you on that path, that conversation with yourself? I've struggled with that. I haven't always had like the best people around me to go like, this is what you should do. Maybe not drinking like multiple times per week is something that you could do like forever. This moment that I had where I'm like, my dad doesn't drink all the time. Like at a certain point he changed, like I'm kind of lucky for that. So there's an example that was set there.
I think if I had confided in them more, a lot of things would have been easier. I'm the type of person who internalizes a lot of that stuff because I don't want to burden people.
Oh my, we are so similar on this, man. This is why I wanted to chat with you so much. We're totally similar on that. I totally get that.
Yeah. So I've learned to be better about it, especially now. Same. Like, again, you see the camaraderie between us on the show, but again, that is an evolution also, because we weren't, obviously in our 20s, we weren't that sort of sympathetic, and we weren't sort of, so it took a growing process from all of us. And again, the funny thing is that before the podcast started, we weren't seeing each other that much because, again, everybody's an adult, everybody has their own lives. We didn't have that setting anymore where we're hanging out every weekend and stuff like that. So everybody was sort of in their own space. Yeah. So, when Cog brought King and I onto the show, it was like, oh wow, we're gonna have this again.
That's
and it's
awesome.
Like, and it just started to flow from there. Yeah. So those relationships were sort of reforged in a way special when we started, and we just sort of kind of got back to where we were. So the respect and the love was always there. It was just kind of in hibernation a little bit,
and you guys were all kind of figuring out your own path, kind of the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Was anybody kind of like pulling you away from like the right path, the righteous path, the good decisions? Was there a bad influence on any of that?
Not at all. Not at all. Because I think King would be the one that says like, I don't make the best decisions or whatever the case may be. But he would always he'd say something like, just don't do what I do and you'll be fine. And you'll be fine. So like it'd be one of those things. I never, honestly, we're here because of the fact that the environment that Cog allowed and Cog's mother allowed, and we're here because that environment was safe. Yeah. And it was inviting, and it was, and again, we talk about all the smack talking that we did or whatever, and that's, stuff that kids do. But everyone that was in that group was welcome. Right. Yeah. And, and this speaks obviously to Cog's mom allowing that to happen in her home or whatnot, all these kids in her house every weekend. But it's,
can you imagine like now as a grown up, you just like all these kids just like running around up at all hours of the night, just being obnoxious.
My mother was not going to happen. My mother was like, okay, every now and again, you guys, like if there's a fight, you guys want to watch a boxing match, cool, or wrestling, cool. Beyond that, you're not going to be in my house every weekend. So it wasn't going to happen.
Just so clear about it. Yeah.
Thank God for Mama Cog. But it speaks a lot to Cog's personality as well. Cog has always had like a gravity to him, and he's always been the person that like people sort of, when they have issues or whatnot, they gravitate to him because he's always going to listen. He's always going to have good advice, and he's going to tell you if you're messing up, he's going to tell you
what you need to hear.
And that is so poignant because that is him. He's going to tell you what you need to hear. He's not going to sugarcoat it one bit. And if you just need a kind ear, he'll be that as well.
Yeah.
So, and that was important to a lot of kids. Like a lot of the people that were in our group, in our circle, came from bad family situations and whatever, but they had that haven there. They could go there and play games or whatever. And it was, again, it was safe. It was safe, and it kept us away from a lot of stuff. Like growing up in the Bronx in, the late 80s and early to mid 90s was tough.
Pretty rough. Yeah.
It was very rough because the stakes on the street were very, very high. The guys that were drug dealers, whatever the case may be in the street at that time, these are guys that were like pretty heavily connected. So the stakes on the street were high. Like there was a lot of money at stake in it, which means that crime was super high. And
so when you talk about like some of the decisions you made or maybe could have made, is that kind of what you're talking about? Like, were you brushing up against that? Like, could you have ended up in that world, or were you just sort of in the same like vicinity? And
I was in the vicinity of it. I don't know that I could have necessarily wound up because my parents were like pretty strict. My parents were not the type of parents that they would let you sort of hang out on the stoop and stuff like that. They're like, no, if you go out with us.
Yeah.
So out of an act of rebellion, could I have gone that route? Sure.
Yeah.
But in terms of like what I was capable of doing on a day-to-day basis, they had a pretty good, a tight grip on us.
Speaking of high stakes, man, that's high stakes parenting, for all the things that could happen, even in any environment, things could happen. And for it to be that kind of close, that's probably the thing that as much as we kind of joke and laugh about, I would never want to have all these kids run around in my house. If you know what else they could be doing, it could be the most gratifying thing that you could possibly do in your life. It's just like open your home and just like be safe here. I was listening to who was on the show recently talking about going to the comic book store. The guy would just let him come on in.
That was Tony Polanco.
Yeah. Just go on in, and it's like, dude, that's awesome. Like that person, I feel like they knew what they were doing. It was more than just, I don't know what to do with this kid, so I guess he can stay here. I feel like there was a haven, there was a safe haven that was being provided, and there's something to be said about that for sure.
Absolutely, and I think it's weird because I don't think Cog's mom realized it until much later, until he really told her like, you facilitated this. Maybe in your mind you were just like, you know what? Because Cog has always been the great negotiator. He is very good at negotiating, because there were plenty of times that we were super loud.
Yeah.
And his mother would come up like halfway up the stairs.
Yeah, that's all. You don't need to go the whole way.
and just call his name, and he'd get up and be like, I'll be right back.
Yeah.
So you knew there was some kind of negotiation had to go on. He'd come back and be like, everything's cool, but we gotta keep it a little down or whatever. Stop yelling or whatever. Stop cursing, because I know we'd be cursing.
It's the cursing,
yeah. So I remember that his argument was always, hey, you know where I am at all times. I'm here. I'm playing games with my friends. I am nowhere else. 9 times out of 10, you know exactly where I am. I'm not out there doing anything. And that was always the argument.
And little does he know, that's exactly what a parent wants to hear.
Exactly.
Like you couldn't have a more honed in argument for getting whatever the hell you want.
Exactly.
Like, I just want to know he's safe. I just want to know he's safe.
And you know what? I'll take whatever noise, whatever comes along with him. He's here and he's amongst his friends.
Yeah.
And again, that was it. And I don't think in the moment she really realized that she was saving a lot of lives.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Because there were others in our group that were really from bad situations, and but they were there. They were there instead of being someplace else.
Was that sort of where that, I don't know if it's acceptance or what it is, just like you just sort of had a bunch of people from all over the place, different attitudes, different backgrounds, different whatever, because like that is coming through big time. I think it was Zocker, actually. Is it pronounced
Zocker?
Yeah, that's it, because I was listening to you guys a little bit earlier.
Was it Zocker who was doing the comic thing?
Yeah.
Okay, it was Zocker, not Tony. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, it's just wild though. Yeah, is that where so like you have all these different people, all walks of different walks of life, all kind of hanging out in the same kind of group? Because it's so rare. You hear people talk about, I want to, it's actually hard to do. Like, I want to hear from different people. I want to hear different points of view. And then you hear a different point of view. You're like, ooh, I don't like that. And you kind of close up to it. And you don't do that. Like, you really do. You actually do want to hear it. And almost in the face of, like, what is anybody going to do or say about it? You know, like, you guys, it's actually oddly enough, it's actually, I think, driving a lot of the success that you're having, because people are looking for that space. Oddly enough, they're looking for that space where anybody is welcome, and that you're willing to hear each other out. You might disagree about certain things. And I'm just like, I don't know. I've discovered through listening to certain podcasts that most people would just absolutely hate. And I don't listen to those podcasts anymore, but I've discovered new people who I think are amazing because of that. And I never would have discovered these other new amazing people if I wasn't listening to stuff that other people deemed like I shouldn't be listening to that. You know, there's something very gratifying, I think, about just being open to that. And I love that you guys are just walking the walk on that, man.
Oh, we have to. For us, it's from the very beginning was very important. You know, we had certain people on at the, you know, in the early days of the show that immediately we would get DMs about, you know, hey man, you guys, you don't want to have this person on. Yeah. You're going to start being perceived a certain way. And we're like, look, we're going to talk to who we want to talk to. If you feel a way about it, hey, don't watch this show. We'll see you the following week. And if it's, you know, and if you feel so strongly about it that you feel you can't follow us anymore, well, thank you for the support. You know, we're disappointed that you feel that way, but what can we do? Yeah. And that's always sort of been our stance.
That wasn't even like a conscious decision or anything. Like, was that just sort of just natural, the way that you guys just feel about people, really?
About people, yeah, because the thing is, like, you know, I'm not going to judge anyone based on hearsay. Yeah. Or even stuff that I see online that could be taken out of context or whatever, unless I do thorough research and there's like, you know, blatantly egregious stuff that you look at and like, all right. Yeah. And even then, I'd want to have the conversation with you about, hey man, why do you feel this way? Yeah. Just to get perspective. I think when we start talking about like journalism and stuff like that in the gaming space and sort of the, you know, whatever the cancel culture stuff and sort of trying to the othering of certain people that have different opinions, I just think it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because I think at the core of journalism is curiosity.
And there's always the other side of it too, right? So for anybody, there's going to be different camps, and for people who, you know, who like Jason Schreier, for example, there's going to be a camp of people who really don't like Jason Schreier. So how do you even determine like who the right side is? Like, I just don't think that that's even really a thing. You know? So you might have somebody like Colin who probably has fans who don't like Jason Schreier, and you guys have both of those people on. Yeah. And like that is awesome to me. Yeah.
And I would love to be able to broker a meeting between those two.
Both of them.
And see what happens, because it's one of those things that,
you know what's scary?
Yeah.
And it would be fine. I think it would actually be fine.
It should be fine.
It totally would be.
Yeah. And that's the thing. There's no, in my heart, in my mind, there's no scenario where it shouldn't be fine. They could, and at the end of it, they can agree to disagree. Yeah. And they could not like each other, but you can have discourse. You can have discourse. What bothers me most is this unwillingness to have discourse.
I'm so hungry for it, to be honest with you, just because
for sure.
It's like, as a content creator, honestly, it's kind of easy at this point, because it's like, if anybody is looking to differentiate at all and be unique and produce content or conversations that nobody else is having, put people together that don't disagree, because like that sure as hell isn't happening. People are making sure of it, you know.
Exactly. And then what you start having is this sort of echo chamber of like of just thinking, and everybody sort of has these thoughts that are kind of along the same lines. And there's no interest, even when it comes to like just stupid like gaming stuff. Like, even those sort of opinions sort of fall in line with one another in a way that kind of gets boring after a while.
And also, I think it also helps to kind of just put everything else in perspective. Like if you're able to tackle some of those uncomfortable spots, then everything else kind of becomes easier. It becomes less of a big deal. And all of a sudden, I don't know, life becomes less stressful. You're not worried about so many things because you're able to just have some of those tougher conversations, be uncomfortable. Yeah. So the other things that have been making you uncomfortable actually are not nearly as big a deal anymore.
Not at all. I think what works for us as well is that we tackle those sort of difficult conversations removed from the context of politics.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm personally not a person that sort of gravitates much to politics, because for me personally, I just feel like politics is sort of we project societal issues into politics, and then it becomes something that it's not.
Yeah, a lot of us versus them. It's camps.
Exactly. When a lot of the times when you boil the issues down to issues in society, i.e., how human beings choose to treat one another, those are the core problems, right? Yeah. And when you start sort of projecting that onto, this political ideology, this other political ideology, I think, the talking heads that are you're going back and forth sort of become the focus of it and not the problem.
Right.
So we're very good at tackling sort of core issues removed from the politics.
Well, you give space for it as well.
Yeah,
like you're 100%. Not looking for sound bites or anything too. Like, who decided that the show should be 4 hours long? Soft.
No, nobody decides that. It just goes. It just goes, and really none of us and no one has ever said no. Like, we've never had a meeting where someone has said, "Hey, we have to make a concerted effort to make this show 2 hours." Yeah, no one's ever said that. Yeah, because the flow is pure. Listen, sometimes
it's so special.
My wife will come out and she'll be like, "Really, because it's so funny." Because
I've been there too. Yeah.
Because you have that thing, like, that stereotype where like women just love to gossip and talk, right? And then my wife looks and turns to me and she's like, "I've never seen 4 men sitting down gossiping about video games."
Yeah, man.
4 hours. And I'm just, what can I say?
You dedicate like a half of your weekend to it. You know what I mean? Like, it's either some people do football all day Sunday, and some people, maybe you do both at the same time.
No,
football's coming back.
I've fallen off from football. Like, I used to follow everything, and now for me, I just focus on my one love. So
where's your time gone? Where's all your time going, man?
I mean,
how many hours you working, dude?
So Monday through Friday, it's easily anywhere from 15 to 18 hours a day, depending.
That's the whole day. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So Monday through Friday is really, really nuts. And then Saturdays is usually our day. So whatever it is that we want to do that day, we try to. But a lot of times, again, if there's life stuff gets in the way.
That's just all the time? I'm sorry. I'm going back to this 15, 16 hours a day all the time.
Yeah.
52 weeks in a year. Just.
Yeah.
What? Why? Again, oh my gosh.
Well, like I said,
Are you okay?
No, I'm fine.
That's so many hours.
I'm fine. Listen, they look at me. King, the entire crew just looks at me like, "You're crazy. You're crazy.
You are crazy."
Yeah.
Especially for somebody who's not very passionate about it. So.
But it's one of those things, like, again, like I said, I made the decision not to sort of continue to pursue like academia or whatever. And so,
just retire at 50.
Right. Exactly. I work hard in other ways. Right. I would much rather, I could deal a lot easier with, my body being tired as opposed to my mind being tired and sort of being emotionally sort of stressed out. My job doesn't emotionally stress me out.
Oh, that's okay. Mm-hmm.
So you see me, like, when you see me smiling, I'm good. I really am. I'm good. I'm smiling. And that's what sort of kept me from sort of being affected by a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just the fact that work is work. When I'm done with it, I leave it there.
Yeah.
I'm there a lot. Yeah. But I do leave it there.
Yeah, you earn that.
Yeah. So, so the little time that I do have apart to myself, it is dedicated to that, whether it's to the podcast or to my wife or whatever the case may be. It is that. And I'm a big proponent of R&R. Like, I'm probably the one that misses the show most.
Yeah.
Because if I have some time off and I need to go, sit under a palm tree somewhere, I'm going to go do it.
Oh, yeah.
It's super important, like, to me. But yeah, like it is that thing where it's like, I know that, I'm burning the candle at
That's
both.
A lot. How long you been doing? How long you been at that?
On and off 15 years.
You've got to be. So there's not even like an end in sight. Like, this is just life.
It's life. But again, I'm grateful I can have the things that I need and want. without too much stress, right?
Yeah,
And
good
and on
you,
top
man.
of that, again, my wife and I, we had certain plans that sort of got changed around. So when we couldn't conceive, then we started, again, all these different processes that you have, like, fertilization stuff and whatnot.
Yeah.
And that is super expensive.
Sure
So everything that I had set aside for like a home and stuff like that went into that.
Wow.
So then, afterwards, it's like once we made the decision to move forward and like look into adoption and stuff like that, you would think, some people think that it's like it's free, like where you go through the process and it's free or whatnot.
You file your papers and then wait for a kid to show up.
And wait for a kid to show up. And there is a process that is sort of like that.
Yeah.
But if you you have your sights set on either like a small child, an infant, or whatever the case may be, then the process is different. And you probably should go through a private agency, and then that there are costs associated with all of that. So it's like, there's always something else on the horizon that you sort of have to prepare for. So
yeah,
again, I don't mind
the process itself is almost like a weeding out sort of mechanism,
like, for sure.
Who wants this? Because you kind of have to really want it.
You really you have to work towards it. You do, and in our case, that's just what the case is. And for me, I do it gladly. I do it super gladly. And for me, I'd rather be the one that sort of busts his hump in that regard, and have her sort of, have her, because when there was a while where I wasn't doing the two jobs, and she was, and I didn't want her doing that, because I'm like, she came when we got married, she came over from Puerto Rico, and she left everything that she had over there.
Yeah.
And, my wife is she's a licensed psychologist. And in Puerto Rico, just because of the way the economy works or whatever, with that level of education, she was still working like 3 or 4 jobs. Like literally at one point she had like 4 jobs.
Wow.
and not earning a fraction of what she's making here now.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where I'm like, no, like when you get here, you find what you want to do, you find what you're passionate about, do that, and don't worry about extraneous stuff. I'll take care of that.
Yeah. So, see, this is what I mean, man. There's so many different paths. There's so many different ways to go about this.
For sure.
Holy cow.
And going back to the upbringing, that was definitely like, that's my dad. That's my dad.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, obviously.
Yeah. And you don't realize it till you're older.
I know.
It's funny because you look in the mirror one day, it's like,
you're like,
oh,
son of a
dad.
bitch.
I'm my dad. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
All
you see that with a smile on your face. Like, it's not like it's
oh no. I learned.
I think you seem to be proud of that.
I learned to appreciate him a lot. And my mom as well. Because again, growing up, because of how stern he sort of was, I had a resentment towards him because I didn't understand it. And my mom would constantly reinforce me. She's like, you have to understand. When you're older, you'll understand, because you'll be able to understand his story more. A lot of times he'll tell you a story now when you're young, and you have a short attention span. You don't care. Wait and trust me, you will understand and care. And exactly the way it happened, because I don't know, I was 27 years old, 30 years old, whatever the case may be, and the story comes up again, and that whatever the case may be, you sit down, and in that moment you're willing to listen full tilt, full attention. And he grew up with an aunt that raised him and my aunt and my 2 aunts, and this aunt literally poisoned them against their mother. So he grew up with resentment for his mother for years, based on lies. And in this household, she was super strict with them. She took care of them. Yeah. But there was nothing loving about the environment.
Sure.
So he understood sort of familial like sort of dedication. But there just wasn't any nurturing that went along with it. Yeah. And so it was just hard for him to sort of express that. And as he got older, he softened. And then when my sister has 3 kids, so the moment the grandkids come into the picture, it's all of a sudden,
it is.
It's like a light switch.
Yeah,
it's a light switch. And if you look at my dad today, I mean, it's night and day from when I was growing up. He's a totally different person. He's so like, he gets emotional at things, and I'm just like, where was this? And I was
Well, do you think that like that coming in later in life for you has sort of like adjusted you as well? Like, you know, that it sort of has broken the chain, it would seem, where if like sure. every upbringing is a parent being the disciplinarian, like if it's always so strict, then that pattern will continue. But maybe for you now that's broken a little bit.
It definitely is. I think it just depends on how, because despite the fact that he was a disciplinarian, there was definitely love in the house. Like he loved this. He was loving in his own way. Like he you know, he would unexpectedly come and like hug you or so sometimes, you know, or when it came to the baseball stuff and we had that closer bond. Like when I did well in a game, like he'd come over and give me a hug or whatever in a way that it just in a normal home setting, it wouldn't just happen spontaneously. And so I knew it was there. It was just, I didn't quite understand why it wasn't always there. And it just took me being more mature and kind of understanding where he came from to understand that. And and for me, like it just depends on the child, I guess, because some children take that and they're like, their thinking isn't, okay, I'm going to change and evolve from this and learn from this. Some people are just like, well, I'm just going to mimic this because this is what I think is correct. And I think that happens in environments that are toxic, where it's kind of pounded into you and you think that's what it is and you don't see anything else. So for me, it was just, it was something that I resented growing up a little bit, but I was always in a nurturing environment. And thankfully I had my mother there that was always sort of there to sort of mitigate that and tell me like that, you know, he just doesn't know how to express it to you. It's there, but he doesn't know. And if I didn't have that, maybe I'm a different person today.
Yeah, definitely that, definitely. It's funny. I was thinking too about how, I totally lost my train of thought, but that's okay. Dude, I probably take us down a completely different path anyways. Sav, I've had a great time chatting with you tonight, man.
Yeah, man. Awesome. I was so looking forward to this because I'm like,
same here.
I'm just going to sit down and we're going to talk. And I remember you were like, it probably won't be mostly about games. I'm like, perfect. I'm good. Yeah. I don't know if so the week that we were off, like last week, we put up a Patreon sort of stream that we did, a pre-recorded thing that we had actually done 2 weeks prior, just answering questions from the patrons. And a lot of them, some of them delved into more personal stuff. Actually, that was the point, right? So for them to get to sort of know us on a more personal level. And it was cool. It was cool because it's different than the podcast, because again, they're asking about our personal tastes and things like that. So, you know, one of the questions was like, how have you guys coped with COVID? Like what's happened in your lives? So it's one of those things that you have to be willing to sort of share and talk about. And we all did. And the responses to it was like, wow, I love hearing this stuff.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like people are hungry for just something that's a little bit different. And for me, like this show is really born out of like, I kind of just want to have these conversations all the time. Yeah, you know, man. Like just, it took me, I don't know, a couple decades worth of just living where I'm like, why am I not really fulfilled with most conversations? And it's like, local sports team this and politics that and blah, 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 blah. It's like, and it's like,
it's the conversation just you sort of trained to have.
Yeah.
And but they don't, in the end, they're sort of meaningless.
You're trained to have, man. That is like, holy crap. Throw that on a bumper sticker or something.
Yeah.
Like,
you know, it's one of those things that you learn, okay, when you're in a public setting, these are the things it's about, you know,
you
the
can
weather
see people,
or whatever.
Like, turn it on. Exactly. No kidding.
Yeah, no, but I'm definitely, if there's one thing that I really love about, you know, Cog sort of forcing me to be on the show, not forcing me. I did it of my own accord, but he had to nudge me a little bit. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to do this. It is the idea of, you know, finally being comfortable talking into a microphone and just being sort of surprised and excited at the fact that people want to listen to what we have to say.
That is exactly what I'm talking about. Again, sort of like the origins of this show was, I remember listening to other podcasts and somebody would like submit a question, or I would submit a question. And I'm like, oh, that moment is so great. You got to hear yourself sort of like in that podcast, but the moment was so fleeting that I always thought like, okay, well, what if that person had like more of a moment? Like they got to kind of converse a little bit. And again, I think you and I are very similar in this way. Like I grew up very, very shy, which I think sometimes can surprise people, but I think we're probably similar in that front. And I'm like, nobody listened to like what I would have. I couldn't really talk for really that long. I would just shy up and kind of like run away. But there is something to be said about just like, oh, you actually want to hear like my story.
Yeah.
You know, it's so rare that people will, I think, have that dialogue. And that's, I don't know, that's why this is a show that I would want to hear. You know, I like shows like this. So I made one. Absolutely,
man. And I can't commend you enough because again, not everybody can do that because not everybody can sort of carry a conversation just naturally. Right. Because it's hard because the moment you stop and think and be like, oh my God, I'm performing or whatever the case may be, that's when you freeze up, right? And you're like,
big time.
My God, I have nothing now. What can I say now?
Yeah, and actually, I've mentioned this a few times where I'm like, clearly I've got like Audacity running here. Like this is clearly a recording.
Yeah.
And only now that I'm mentioning it am I actually thinking about it. But like that doesn't run through my mind. Like
no, not at all. Like exactly when we logged on and you were like, okay, I'm pressing record now. Like that was it. And it's just start talking. You know, it's funny that you mentioned the shyness and speaking. I had a thing when my dad would take me to work with him when I was young, and again, super shy, super sort of reserved, and I was sort of ashamed. You know, I was embarrassed to say good morning because I didn't like the way it sounded.
Yep.
Something like, "Hi, how are you?" Good
morning. It makes it
like,
way worse.
Like, it was so
speak up.
Speak up. What? Good morning. And it was one of those things. It's so weird. And I remember even in high school, starting to come out of that show, and the way it happened was, I was in a class that was it was a public speaking class, right? So the boarding school had like this humongous sort of quad area. There was a big pond, and there was the the post office. There's a small little post office where everybody got their mail and packages and whatnot. So what my public speaking teacher would do was put a podium out in front of the pond, knowing full well that the entire school walks through there at different points of the day. And he would conduct class from there, and you would have to stand up on that podium and read whatever you wrote, speech, whatever the case may be, essay. You would read it out loud for the entire school to hear.
Wow.
And it was just trial by fire.
That's extreme, dude.
Super extreme, but it worked. But it worked because, again, it was a situation that was kind of always nurturing. Like your friends would walk by and they tease you, whatever. But it'd be playful.
Yeah, it's your turn.
Yeah, it's your turn. Yes, a lot of them had already taken this class. So like, you have to do this now.
Yeah,
but it's kind of, it was one of those like a brotherhood type thing. Like, oh, you're in the club now. Now you get it now. And after that, honestly, it was. I kind of found my voice more. And then another thing that that we've talked a lot about on the podcast is the dynamic that King brings to it and what he brought to our group when we were younger. We were always super competitive, but it was a lot more sort of reserved and gentlemanly like. When King got in there and taught it, it got messy. It got messy because he's really making you feel like you're horrible. And so you have to learn to defend yourself. And if you don't, like, you would go home crying every damn weekend because it would be. So you had to learn how to verbally defend yourself and to sort of develop that mental toughness to also sort of, because King sort of his tactics were to sort of break you down mentally. So even if you were better at him in a game, you just couldn't function because he would just talking your ear off. Yeah. And it was one of those things that in a lot of ways we grew up as men in that environment because it was, you just learn to defend yourself. You learn to sort of stand up for yourself and to sort of not be fazed by situations that could cause nervousness or whatever. And man, it's so many different things that I've experienced, that have sort of brought me to where I am today. But but
it was before the podcast. I think that's the unique thing. That's maybe where our paths differ a little bit, well, maybe a lot in some cases. But like I, it was the podcast that like had me comfortable with. okay, the other person's going to be quiet for a second while I actually completed this thought. Like that was developed through the podcast. I had no business starting a podcast the way I was 5-6 years ago. There's no way, and there's that's sort of when I reflect on, life and just time and things like that and the development of yourself. It's like, that's something I reflect on quite a lot. When you put yourself out there and you're uncomfortable and you actually, I don't know if it's an ignorance or a courageousness or whatever it is. It's just like a blind will to do something different. And then you kind of come out the other side totally different. And
you do.
I don't know, man. Like I've often told people everybody should have their own podcast, but it's like, maybe it's not a podcast, but something that you're just like, you've never done before, that you think you might enjoy, and just like give it a shot. And who the hell cares if it's amazing or not, or just give it a try, man.
Yeah.
Drawing, playing guitar, like, I don't know.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It sounds cliche, right? But what is it? What's the whole thing about, the chances you don't take?
Oh, Wayne Gretzky. Yeah, man. You miss every 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah. And it's, it is so true. I guess we're, humans are corny. We're corny. Like, we're a little corny. Those are the type of things that sort of kind of uplift us and kind of force us to step out of our comfort zones and be willing to do different things. And for me, of my own accord, I wouldn't have done it, So thanks to
Cog. Or be here. Yeah, exactly. Like, well, I was really excited for a couple of reasons I've kind of talked about, but especially because there's so many of you guys on the show, I don't know that anybody gets, a moment to kind of have a lot to say and like kind of go on and on. So I kind of wanted to get you, have the Sov moment. So that's the Sov.
It's funny that I guess I don't realize that people see me as the quiet one.
Yeah, definitely.
Because in the beginning, I know that I was quieter. Like and then I just kind of found my voice within like the context of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because it sort of falls into where my voice fell into when we were growing up. Like, it's just one of those things. Like, if we really stop and think about our personalities, they haven't changed all that much, right? We've grown, we've matured. But in terms of the core aspects of each of our personalities, it's still the same.
Kind of you've settled in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a settling in. So now, I'm kind of right where I belong. Whereas, like, when King goes off the wire or whatever, I'm gonna say something. No, there's no way or whatever. And then
so good.
Attic sort of takes that role as well, and I have to sort of shut Attic down too. So it's like
it's excellent, dude. It's not a podcast. Like, if you just ask me, like, what exactly are you looking for? I'm like, give me as many people on a podcast as possible and make it 5-6 hours long. And that's not what I would have drawn up. But as it turns out, it's something I really enjoy, dude.
It's just talking. Yeah, I think that's what people gravitate to, the fact that it's just talking.
Yeah.
And when we do get down to like interviewing people and stuff like that, Cog is super thorough, and he's big shout out to him, because he really works hard at just like the technical aspects of interviewing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And from the beginning, he's like, you're a natural, just go. And I'm like, I didn't quite believe him until I just got thrown out there. And I remember just going to like the first PAX, and like King was like, you're going to be interviewing people and I'll record. And I'm like, okay.
And then you just go. So I love it, man. Well, I think, do you want to let everybody know where we've been talking about it. Most people probably have already listened to it, but do you want to let everybody know where they can find you on the internet and all your podcast, or the podcast and everything?
Absolutely. I mean, you could find me on Twitter, Lord Sav ILP. And of course, every Sunday, usually 1 p.m. Eastern time, on the Iron Lords podcast on YouTube. But starting tomorrow, actually, I know this is a pre-recorded show, but starting on September 12th, Sunday. So not tomorrow, excuse me. This is Friday. So starting on the 12th of September, we go to 11 a.m. until the end of football season. It's because
okay, yes.
We bend the knee to football. So yeah. So we start at 11 a.m. starting this Sunday for a couple of months. Cool. Yeah, very cool. So I get to get most of my day back.
Nice. All right. I'm looking forward to it, man. Well, it's been awesome just getting to know you a little bit better, and
Thank you, brother.
I continue to be a huge fan, and thanks for carving out some. I got a couple hours out of your not working or sleeping.
Yeah, exactly.
So I appreciate it, my friend.
No, man, I thank you so much for having me. This has been amazing. I love conversations like this. I cannot wait to the day where we can just hang out in person, have the same conversation over a couple of drinks or whatever, just hang out, hopefully at an E3, if E3 is a thing in the future.
I told Cog that I'm in New York at the beginning of November. Actually, I'll be in New York City, so I'll just kind of like swing on by and just go like quick high five. And
man, for sure. Like sweet. We actually tomorrow I'm going with the guys. Cog is going. We're gonna go see Shang-Chi.
Nice.
And just go and then hang out, get some food afterwards. So try to have some semblance of normalcy.
No doubt. Enjoy that, man. Well, thanks again for your time tonight, dude.
Thanks so much, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I feel so lucky to just be able to reach out to some of these people and have people reach out to me and they actually want to be on the show. And it's kind of to the point now too where I think for the most part people kind of know what they're signing up for, like they either do their own research or they've been a listener of the show or whatever, and still you choose to come on. Every once in a while that kind of hits me. It's like that's actually kind of amazing. We've got a bunch of guests lined up for October, you guys. I'm really, really excited about it. I can't even believe I just said that. October. What the crap? We're basically through September here. We're into the thick of games. I'm going to be talking so much about all the games I'm playing right now. We're going to do like a bit of a review discussion on the Nintendo Drive for WarioWare. Ryan Turford and I. If Kato's listening to this is probably the first that she's hearing about it, to be honest with you. But that's okay. We got a bunch of games coming out. Tales of Arise. We're playing it, all of us, me, Ryan, and Matt from the PlayStation Drive as well. We're all playing it. We're going to be reviewing that as well. I'm going to try my best to keep up with those guys. I finished Psychonauts. I'm going to be talking about that on the Xbox Drive. It's good times, man. I'm telling you. These conversations that I had with Sav here, with Lee Navarro last week, with so many people before this, I got to meet a whole bunch of amazing people earlier today as my throat continues to go on me. Just reflecting a lot on that right now. And I hope you guys have people like that in your lives from the bottom of my heart. I really do. And if you don't, go find them. We've got a wonderful community here. You definitely should be checking out Lord Sovereign and the team over at Iron Lords Podcast. You can follow Sov, again, at Lord Sov, ILP. You probably already, but, it's worthwhile mentioning that as well. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, of course, it's Sean Lake Connor, at Capri Like the Pants. You can support the show and all the other stuff that we do. We work really hard, and we appreciate every single one of you guys for supporting the show at patreon.com/Yumi Capri. We're almost at 70 people. We'd love to tip the scales up and over 70. We're actually we've listened to the Xbox Drive as well, because we definitely hit 75 reviews. I don't think they're all 5-star reviews. I don't think that's what we ever specified. They have to be good reviews on Apple Podcasts, but we have 75 reviews over there, which is helping us get discovered. So we're going to be giving away a controller. So listen to the Xbox Drive for more details on that if you want to learn about any of that. And this is the end of the song, and that's kind of it. This is the end of the show. If you're new, I don't know why, but I sort of end the show with this little bit from Heavy Rain. The PlayStation 3 classic, the one that everybody remembers. Where's Jason? He interrupts me all the time, but this is the end. Thank you guys for...
Jason! 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 Sean! 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 Sean, where are you? Jason! 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 Sean! 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 Jason! 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 Jason!